The stars outside the ship window were quiet. Nothing moved except the slow drifting of the clouds of Varela 9. It was supposed to be a calm mission. Just a peaceful landing, a short survey, and back to orbit. That's what the team had planned. But nothing went as planned. Rami opened his eyes to smoke and sparks. The inside of the ship was a mess. Metal walls were bent. Loose wires hung from the ceiling. The floor was tilted. It took him a moment to remember what happened. A sudden power. Drop. Then shaking. Then everything turned dark. He sat up slowly, his head spinning. The ship had crash-landed. Rami was the mission's engineer, quiet and careful. He wasn't a leader, but right now there was no one giving orders. He had to move. "Hello?" he called out weakly. There was no answer. He pulled himself up using a railing. His legs were shaky but still working. Sparks flew near one of the broken control panels. He walked past it carefully, searching for others. Then he heard a voice. Faint. Weak. Coming from the back of the ship. Rami. It was Nia, the team's botanist. She was one of the kindest people he'd met, always talking softly to her. Plants, always writing in her green notebook. Rami followed the sound, stepping over broken equipment and burnt panels. He found her near the cargo door. She was lying on the floor, one leg stuck under a piece of metal. Her face was pale and she was sweating. "I can't move," she said, her voice shaking. "I think my leg is broken." Rami dropped beside her and checked the metal piece. It wasn't heavy, but it was stuck deep in the floor. He looked at Naya's leg. Swollen. Not good. He placed his hand gently on her shoulder. "I'll get you out." Using a small tool from his belt, he carefully lifted the metal enough to free her leg. Nia cried out in pain but didn't complain. Once her leg was free, Rami looked around. The ship wasn't safe anymore. There were too many fires, too much damage. The emergency signal wasn't working. They needed to leave. "I'll carry you," he said quietly. "No," she replied, shaking her head. "You won't make it far with me. Go. Find help. Come back later." But Rami didn't answer. He opened a small locker and pulled out an old piece of equipment, a prototype exoskeleton suit. It was a machine built to help carry heavy loads, mostly for building work. Not perfect, but it would have to do. He quickly strapped the metal suit to his back and legs. The exoskeleton lit up with a low hum. It was working, but barely. Then, without saying a word, Rami gently picked up Nia in his arms. "Rami, please," she whispered. "You don't have to do this." But Rami simply looked ahead. "Yes, I do." He stepped out of the broken ship and into the wild green world of Varela 9. The forest was thick. Tall trees stretched into the sky like towers. Strange birds flew above, and glowing plants lined the path. Everything was quiet but not peaceful. The air was heavy, like the planet was watching them. Rami walked slowly, each step guided by the soft support of the exoskeleton. It made small clicks and whirs with every move. He held Nia carefully, making sure not to hurt her leg. Nia looked around, trying to stay awake. "This planet is beautiful," she said softly. Rami nodded. "Yes, but we need to find the extraction point. It's about 40 kilometers south." "That's too far," Nia replied. "You can't carry me all that way." Rami kept walking. "I can try." The sun was bright above them and the air was warm. After just a few hours, sweat was running down Rami's face. The exoskeleton was starting to heat up. It wasn't built for long travel. Not like this. They reached a river. The bridge shown on the old satellite map was gone. Rami stepped into the shallow water, carefully moving from rock to rock. One slip could break the whole machine, or worse, hurt Nia. He reached the other side, heart pounding. They rested under a wide tree. Nia looked at him with tired eyes. "You should really leave me," she said again. Rami didn't reply. He handed her a piece of dried fruit from his bag and a few sips of water. "You're very quiet," she said, after a pause. "I like listening," he replied. They continued. By the end of the first day, Rami's legs were sore, even with the machine. The battery light on the exoskeleton flashed yellow. It meant the power was half gone. They would need sunlight to charge it using the small solar panel built into the back. They stopped for the night in a shallow cave near a hill. Rami placed Nia gently on a soft patch of grass and covered her with a heat blanket. She was drifting, in and out of sleep, her fever rising. Rami sat by the cave opening, eyes watching the stars. He was exhausted, but alert. Strange sounds came from the forest, clicks, hums, soft whistles. This planet was full of life, most of it still unknown. He looked back at Nia. She was mumbling in her sleep, dreaming of something far away. Maybe her home, maybe her garden on Europa Colony. He thought of his own family, his little brother back on Earth. A time long ago when a storm had come and someone didn't come back for him. Since then, Rami had made a promise to himself. No one would be left behind. Not ever again. As he sat there, the battery light on the exoskeleton turned red. He sighed quietly and unfolded the solar panel to catch the morning light. Tomorrow they would keep going, no matter how far it was. The sky above Varela 9 turned from deep blue to orange as the third day began. Gentle wind moved through the trees, shaking soft leaves that made a quiet, rustling sound. It was peaceful, but Rami had no time to enjoy the beauty. He was already awake, watching the horizon, waiting for enough light to charge the exoskeleton again. He looked down at Nia. She was still sleeping, her face a little better now. The fever was lower and her breath was not as fast. Her leg was still badly swollen, but at least she was resting peacefully. Rami opened a small food pack, only 2 were left now, and ate half of it. He saved the rest for Nia. Then he connected the solar panel to the exoskeleton and waited for the sun to give enough energy for one more day of travel. As light touched the forest floor, the orange light on the machine turned green for a few seconds. It was ready to move, at least for a few more kilometers. When Nia woke up, she blinked at the light. "Is it morning already?" she asked. "Yes," Rami said softly. "We'll move soon. I feel a little better," she said with a faint smile. "That's good," Rami replied. He handed her the last piece of fruit and a bit of water. She took small bites, looking at the tall trees above. "I dreamed I was walking through my mother's garden again," she said quietly. "I wish I could go back there." "You will," Rami said. "We're almost there." With gentle care, he lifted her into his arms again. The exoskeleton adjusted around his legs and back, humming softly. The path ahead led to a canyon, deep and wide, with only one way across. An old stone bridge that looked as if it could fall at any time. Rami walked slowly, each step firm. The bridge creaked under his weight, but it held. Below them, fog moved, through the bottom of the canyon like a river made of smoke. Nia held her breath, and Rami focused only on the next step. And the next. When they reached the other side, Nia let out a long breath. "I didn't think we'd make it," she said. "I did," Rami said simply. The trail ahead was now part of a strange valley with high walls of stone on both sides. The air was cooler here, and the sound of wind passing through the rocks made a low singing tone. It was soft and calm, almost like music. "This place sounds alive," Nia said, looking around. Rami listened. It was true. The rocks vibrated with the wind, creating deep notes that echoed softly. The exoskeleton systems began to act differently. The movement was smoother now, the clicks quieter. Even the battery seemed to last longer. Nia noticed it too. "Is it reacting to the sound?" she asked. "Maybe," Rami said. "Or the planet is helping us." They moved carefully through the singing canyon. The rocks seemed to glow slightly, with sunlight, and small blue vines grew along the walls, giving the air a light, sweet smell. Rami stopped for a moment and touched one of the vines. It felt warm. They rested near a stone ledge shaped like a bench. Rami sat down, keeping Nia close, making sure her leg didn't touch the hard surface. She leaned her head against his chest. "Do you think they're looking for us?" she asked. "I don't know," Rami replied. "But I think we're close. Enough now. If the signal is working, someone will come." "What if no one comes?" she whispered. "Then I'll keep going until someone does," Rami said. They sat in silence, listening to the wind's music. For a short moment, the fear, the pain, the tiredness, they faded. Just two people in a quiet, strange place, holding on to hope. As they continued forward, they came across a wide open space in the canyon, a kind of clearing surrounded by tall cliffs. In the center stood a single large stone pillar. On top of it sat something unexpected, an ancient, moss-covered device. It wasn't human-made. It looked older than anything Rami had ever seen. "It's alien," Nia said, eyes wide with wonder. Rami slowly approached it. The device was shaped like a ring with markings all over it. As he stepped closer, it lit up faintly. Just for a second. "Did you see that?" Nia whispered. "Yes," Rami said. "I think it felt us." They didn't touch it. They just stared at it, knowing this world held secrets far beyond their understanding. But there was no time to explore. Rami checked the scanner again. The signal from the beacon was stronger now. They were only a few kilometers away. But the path ahead went uphill through rough land covered in thick, silver-colored grass. The exoskeleton slowed down again. The battery was dropping fast. Rami could feel the weight more now. His arms ached, his back was sore, and sweat covered his face. Still, he didn't stop. Step by step, he pushed forward. The wind picked up again. The singing sounds behind them faded, replaced by a deep silence as they entered a new part of the land. At the top of the slope, Rami stopped to rest. He gently placed Nia on the soft grass and lay beside her, looking up at the sky. The sun was beginning to fall again. Soon it would be night. "We're close," he said. "How close?" she asked. "Tomorrow morning if we keep moving." Nia smiled. "Then we'll make it." Rami didn't say anything. He just looked at her and nodded. He didn't need to speak. Everything he wanted to say was already in his actions. As they rested, strange glowing insects rose from the ground again, floating above them like stars. The sky slowly turned purple, and the moons of Virella appeared. They were almost there. Just one more day, and Rami would carry her every step of the way. The sky turned golden as the fourth morning arrived. Soft winds moved through the silver grass, and the tall trees behind them swayed gently. Rami sat up slowly, his body sore, his arms stiff. He had not slept properly in days, but his mind stayed sharp. He looked at the exoskeleton, its light still blinking weakly. Power was low again, but enough to move. He turned to Naya. She was awake, looking at the horizon. "Did you sleep?" he asked her. "A little," she said. "I had strange dreams. I saw the garden again, but this time it was here, on this planet. Everything was glowing." Rami gave her a small smile. "Maybe one day someone will grow a garden here." She looked at him. "Maybe it'll be you." Rami didn't answer. He stood up, stretched his arms, then gently picked Nia up again. The exoskeleton adjusted with a soft click. It was slower now. The legs creaked with every move, but they still worked. They had one final hill to climb. Beyond that, the beacon tower should be visible. That's what the map showed. Rami took his first step up the slope, careful not to slip. The ground was covered with fine dust that rose in little clouds as he moved. Each step felt heavier than before, not just because of the weight, but because of the journey behind them. "Tell me something," Nia said. "Something real." Rami thought for a second. Then he said, "When I was younger, I wanted to go to the stars. Not to explore, just to be alone. I thought space would be quiet. But it isn't." Nia looked at him. "And now? Now, I think being with someone in the noise is better than being alone in the silence." She smiled, weak but warm. The climb became steeper. The exoskeleton groaned. Rami's breath grew short. His legs burned, even with the support of the suit. The battery was blinking red now. The last bit of energy. As they reached the top of the hill, Rami stopped. His chest rose and fell fast. Nia looked up. "What is it?" Rami pointed. There it was, the beacon tower. It stood tall in the middle of a small open field, its base covered in moss, its top still blinking a tiny green light. It was still active. It was still waiting. Nia gasped. "We made it!" Rami nodded, too tired to speak. He started moving again, downhill now, slower but steady. The field below looked calm. The grass was shorter and small round stones lined. The path, like someone, or something, had made it long ago. Halfway to the beacon, the exoskeleton beeped. Then it stopped moving. The suit froze. Rami tried to step forward, but the legs wouldn't respond. The battery had died completely. He stood still for a moment, holding Nia tightly in his arms. Then he slowly crouched down, let her rest on a soft patch of grass, and began removing the exoskeleton. "Rami?" she asked, worried. "It's finished," he said. "It carried us as far as it could." He left the metal suit on the side and stretched his arms. They were tired, shaking, but his eyes still held strength. "I'll carry you the rest of the way," he said softly. "You've done enough," she said. "I can crawl." "No," he said. "You won't crawl. You've made it this far. You deserve to stand tall when help arrives." He picked her up again, this time with only his own strength. His legs wobbled, his back ached, but he moved. Forward. Step by step. One foot after the other. Nia looked at his face. Sweat ran down his cheeks. His eyes were red, but he didn't stop. "You don't give up, do you?" she whispered. "No," he replied. The wind picked up again. The grass moved like waves in the ocean. The sky above turned brighter, the twin moons beginning to fade. As they reached the base of the beacon, Rami placed Nia down gently against the structure. He pressed a button on its side. A soft beep sounded, then a flashing blue light appeared on top. The emergency signal was sent. Now they had to wait. Rami sat down beside her, breathing hard. His hands were shaking. His body felt heavy, but his heart felt light. Nia leaned her head against his shoulder. "You did it, Rami. You brought me here." "We did it," he said. They stayed like that for a while, quiet, resting. The world around them was silent too, like it was holding its breath. Then, in the distance, a sound, soft at first, then louder. Rami looked up. A small dot appeared in the sky. Then it grew bigger. It was a rescue shuttle. The light on its front flashed, and it began to descend. Nia smiled through her tears. They came. Rami watched it land slowly, dust flying around. The door opened, and two figures stepped out in suits. One of them waved. "Over here!" Rami called, standing up and lifting his arm. The medics rushed over, checking Nia first. She was weak, but awake and smiling. "Don't worry," she told them. "He never let me fall." They placed her gently on a stretcher. One of the medics turned to Rami. "Are you hurt?" "I'm fine," he said. "Just tired." They helped him into the shuttle. As the door closed behind them, Rami looked one last time at the jungle outside, the tall trees, the singing wind, the path they walked. He didn't speak. He just closed his eyes and whispered, "Thank you." The shuttle lifted off from the surface of Virela 9, rising gently into the sky. Through the small window, Rami watched the trees and silver grass disappear under clouds. The planet that once felt endless now looked small, peaceful. He leaned, back in the seat, too tired to move, his arms resting by his side. Across from him, Nia lay on a stretcher, an oxygen mask on her face, her eyes closed but calm. A soft machine beeped beside her, keeping track of her heartbeat. The medic beside her gave Rami a thumbs up. "She'll be okay," he said. "We just need to get her back to the station." Rami nodded slowly, his head heavy with exhaustion. His muscles ached, but inside his heart there was a strange warmth, like quiet pride. He didn't think of himself as a hero. He had only done what felt right. He had kept a promise. The shuttle passed through the clouds and into orbit, where the research station floated like a silver island in space. It was the same station they had launched from just days earlier, but to Rami, it felt like he was returning from another lifetime. As the shuttle docked, a small group of crew members waited. Some were medical staff, others were officers. News of the crash had reached them just a few hours before. They had thought the team was lost, but now here they were, two survivors. When the door opened, Nia was wheeled out first. Her blanket was pulled up to her chin, and her eyes slowly opened. One of the doctors smiled. "Welcome back." Rami stepped out next, slower, walking on his own but clearly tired. He wore no suit now. just a simple jacket over dusty clothes. His shoes were torn and his arms were bruised, but he stood straight. A voice called out from the side. "Is that him? That's the one who carried her?" Rami looked but didn't speak. A tall woman stepped forward. She was the mission director. Her name was Mara, and she looked at Rami with both shock and deep respect. "We thought no one would make it," she said. "What you did, it's hard to believe." "I just walked," Rami said softly. "Carrying someone the whole way, through that terrain, with a broken suit?" She shook her head. "That's not just walking." He didn't answer. His eyes drifted to Nia, who was now being rolled into the medical bay. Later that evening, after treatment and food, Rami sat in the station's quiet observation room, looking out at Varela through the large window. The planet still spun slowly in space, as if unaware of the story it had just become part of. A soft voice interrupted his thoughts. "You didn't leave me. It was Naya." She stood behind him, leaning on crutches, her leg in a support brace. She had changed into clean clothes, and her face looked brighter, though still pale. Rami stood up quickly. "You should be resting." "I wanted to see the stars," she said, walking over slowly. They stood together in silence for a moment, watching the planet below. "You begged me to leave you," Rami said, his voice low. "I thought it was the smart thing," Nia replied. "But I didn't really want to be left." "I know." She turned toward him, her eyes full of quiet emotion. "You could have given up. You didn't have to carry me all the way. But you did. I made a promise. To myself long ago," Rami said. "Never leave someone behind." Nia smiled. "Well, you kept that promise, and you gave me something more. Hope." In the days that followed, the story spread. People from different stations sent messages. They called him the one who carried. Some even said it was the most human thing they had ever heard. Young workers in training began talking about Rami like he was a legend. Children on other colonies played pretend, tying backpacks and pretending they were carrying someone through the jungle. Rami didn't enjoy the attention. He stayed quiet, always helping behind the scenes, fixing machines, checking systems. That's where he felt at home. But something inside him had changed. One day, as he was working in the equipment room, Nia walked in holding a small box. "What's this?" he asked. "Open it." Inside was a small metal badge. It showed two figures, one carrying the other. Below it were the words, "Strength is quiet." "They're calling it the Rami badge," she said with a smile. "They want to give it to people who show courage and kindness during missions." Rami looked down at the badge, then back at Nia. "I didn't do it for a medal," he said. "I know," she replied. "That's why you deserve it." He held the badge gently, then placed it back in the box. "Give it to someone else," he said. "Someone who needs to be reminded." Nia nodded. "All right. But one day, you'll have to accept that you did something special." Rami didn't reply. He just went back to fixing a small machine, his hands calm and focused. From that day on, people treated him differently, not just with respect, but with quiet admiration. They asked him for advice. They listened when he spoke, even if it was only a few words. And sometimes, when no one was watching, Rami would walk past the window, look at Varela spinning slowly in space, and whisper to himself, "It was only 3 days, but it changed everything." Days passed, then weeks. Life at the space station slowly returned to normal. The research teams got back to their projects, and new missions were being planned. But something had changed. Rami still worked quietly in the engineering room. He fixed broken wires, cleaned tools, and checked machines that most people forgot about. He didn't talk much, and he didn't like crowds. But now, people noticed him. They greeted him with respect. Even when they didn't speak, their eyes said everything. They knew what he had done. Sometimes younger crew members would stop by and pretend they were checking tools, but really, they wanted to see him. Some asked for stories. Others just said, "Thank you," and walked away, a little more inspired than before. Rami didn't seek praise. He just nodded and went back to work. But inside, a quiet part of him felt something new, something like peace. One evening, as the lights dimmed across the station, Rami walked into the hydroponic room. It was quiet, filled with green plants, soft lights, and a light scent of fresh leaves. In the middle stood Nia, carefully placing small vines into water trays. She looked up and smiled. "I thought I'd find you here." "I like it here," Rami said. "It reminds me of that strange forest on Virella." "Me too," Nia said, touching one of the leaves gently. "But here I can walk." Her leg was healing well. She still used a cane sometimes, but each day she moved more freely. The doctors said she would fully recover in time. "Some of the plants from Virella survived the trip," she continued. "I'm growing them now, slowly, carefully. I want to understand what made that planet feel so alive." Rami nodded. "It felt like it wanted us to survive." "I think it did," she said. "Maybe it watched us. Maybe it even helped you walk when the exoskeleton was about to stop." He smiled lightly. "I don't know. Maybe. But I do know I wouldn't have made it without you talking. Your voice kept me going." Nia looked at him warmly. "You carried me, but I carried your spirit." They sat beside the garden for a while, just breathing in the calm air. Later that week, a message arrived from the Earth Council. They wanted to honor both Rami and Nia for their courage and teamwork. The station's crew prepared a small ceremony. Not too big, not too fancy, just simple, like Rami would want. At the event, people gathered in the main hall. There were soft lights, a few chairs, and a long table with food from different colonies. Nia spoke first. She shared their story, not just about being carried, but about fear, trust, and the silence between two people who didn't give up on each other. Then the director, Mera, handed Rami a special medal. It was silver, shaped like the stars, with a small vine carved into it. Rami took the medal quietly and looked at the crowd. He didn't speak for a moment. Everyone waited. Then, in his calm voice, he said, "Thank you. But I think anyone would have done the same, if they promised never to leave someone behind." The room stayed quiet for a second. Then everyone stood and clapped. After the event, Rami walked back to the engineering bay. A small box with the medal now rested in his locker, beside a tiny stone he had picked up from Virella. It was smooth and shaped like a heart, though he never told anyone that. Over the next few days, something surprising happened. A group of young engineers began building a new version of the exoskeleton. They called it the Rami frame. It was stronger, smarter, and able to walk longer distances. Rami helped quietly, offering ideas and fixing small parts, but he never took credit. Nia, meanwhile, wrote a small book called 3 Days in His Arms. It wasn't about pain or danger. It was about kindness, patience, and the way simple actions could change lives. She shared it with schools on Earth and the colonies. People read it, and many cried. One message from a boy on Mars said, "I want to be like Rami when I grow up, strong but kind." One day, while walking past the window that looked out at Virela, Nia asked Rami, "Do you ever want to go back there?" He paused. "I do. Not because I want to remember the struggle, but because I want to thank the planet." She smiled. "Maybe one day we'll return, together. But next time, we'll walk side by side." Rami nodded. "I'd like that." Back on Earth, a statue was built at the Space Academy's training center. It showed a person carrying another in their arms, walking forward with strength in their steps. The words on the base were simple: carry with courage, stand with care. Rami never visited the statue. He didn't need to. He lived those words every day. To most people, he was a hero, but to himself, he was just someone who kept a promise. And that, to him, was enough. 1 year had passed since the mission to Virela 9. The space station had changed, and so had the people on it. Missions still came and went. Science projects continued. New faces joined. But one story remained, told quietly, passed from one person to another, like a memory too important to forget. Rami still lived on the station. He chose not to return to Earth. The stars felt like home now. Each day he worked quietly in engineering. He fixed what was broken. He cleaned what others forgot. He asked for no reward and gave no speeches. But wherever he went, people moved aside with quiet respect. Nia also stayed. Her leg had healed fully. She no longer used a cane. Her greenhouse was now the brightest room on the station. Plants from Earth, Europa, and Virela all grew side by side. Some of them, like the soft blue vine from Virela, had begun to bloom, in strange shapes, unlike anything seen before. The two of them still met often. Sometimes they worked in silence. Other times they shared small stories, sipped warm drinks, or just watched the stars together. One quiet evening, Nia walked into the engineering bay. She held something in her hands, a folded paper, soft at the edges. "Rami," she said. "They want us back on Virela." He looked up from his tools. "Why?" "A new science team is going there. They need help setting up long-term equipment. They asked for people who know the land and people who know how to survive it." Rami stared at her. "You said you wanted to walk there one day. Are you ready?" "I'm more than ready," Nia said. "But I won't go unless you come too." Rami gave a small smile. "Then I guess we're going together." A month later, they landed again on Virela's soft green surface. This time, it wasn't a crash. It was calm. A clean shuttle touched the ground smoothly. A small team of explorers stepped out with gear, food, tools, and hopes of discovery. Rami and Nia walked side by side through the familiar trees. The forest was still there, alive, glowing, mysterious. The same vines moved in the wind. The air still carried the quiet music of the leaves. They passed the old cave where they had rested the first night, the stone bridge, the singing canyon. Even the mossy alien structure still stood, silent and glowing faintly under the sun. At the old beacon site, the grass had grown taller. But when Nia stepped into the field, something amazing happened. Tiny glowing bugs began to rise from the grass, floating all around them like stars. It was exactly like that final night, the night they had been rescued. "They remember us," Nia whispered. "Or they remember kindness," Rami replied. The science team set up camp nearby, building small shelters and placing sensors across the field. But Rami and Nia had one more thing to do. Together they carried a small metal box. Smooth, silver, simple. It wasn't a machine. It was something else. At the center of the field, they dug a small space, placed the box gently inside, and covered it again with the soft soil. "What's in it?" one young explorer asked. Nia answered softly, "Just our story, a piece of our clothes, a photo, a message." "What does the message say?" Rami looked at him and replied, "That carrying someone is not weakness. It's strength. Real strength comes from care." The young man nodded, understanding more than his years could say. As the sun set, the team lit soft lights across the site. Music played quietly from a speaker. It wasn't a party. It was something smaller, warmer, a celebration of the spirit that brought people home. Later that night, Nia and Rami sat near the fire, their backs against a stone. "Do you think the planet helped us?" Nia asked. Rami thought for a moment. "Maybe. Or maybe we helped each other, and the planet just watched." She smiled. "I'm glad you didn't leave me." "I never would have," he replied. She rested her head on his shoulder. They didn't say anything for a long time. They just looked up at the sky, where the stars slowly blinked and the moons of Varela rose again. Back at the space station, a quiet recording played on loop at the Academy for new recruits. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was Rami's voice, recorded during one of his rare talks. "If you ever have the choice to walk away or carry someone, choose to carry. Not because it's easy, but because someone once carried me too, in a way I didn't expect. With words, with trust, with presence. And that made all the difference." The recording ended there. New explorers listened with full hearts, and far away, on a green planet glowing under twin moons, two friends walked through the jungle, not lost, not afraid, not alone. 1 year had passed since the mission to Varela 9. The space station had changed, and so had the people on it. Missions still came and went. Science projects continued. New faces joined. But one story remained, told quietly, passed from one person to another, like a memory too important to forget. Rami still lived on the station. He chose not to return to Earth. The stars felt like home now. Each day he worked quietly in engineering. He fixed what was broken. He cleaned what others forgot. He asked for no reward and gave no speeches. But wherever he went, people moved aside with quiet respect. Nia also stayed. Her leg had healed fully. She no longer used a cane. Her greenhouse was now the brightest room on the station. Plants from Earth, Europa, and Varela all grew side by side. Some of them, like the soft blue vine from Varela, had begun to bloom, in strange shapes, unlike anything seen before. The two of them still met often. Sometimes they worked in silence. Other times they shared small stories, sipped warm drinks, or just watched the stars together. One quiet evening, Nia walked into the engineering bay. She held something in her hands. A folded paper, soft at the edges. "Rami," she said. "They want us back on Varela." He looked up from his tools. "Why?" A new science team is going there. They need help setting up long-term equipment. They asked for people who know the land and people who know how to survive it. Rami stared at her. You said you wanted to walk there one day. Are you ready? I'm more than ready, Nia said. But I won't go unless you come too. Rami gave a small smile. Then I guess we're going together. A month later, they landed again on Varella's soft green surface. This time, it wasn't a crash. It was calm. A clean shuttle touched the ground smoothly. A small team of explorers stepped out with gear, food, tools, and hopes of discovery. Rami and Nia walked side by side through the familiar trees. The forest was still there, alive, glowing, mysterious. The same vines moved in the wind. The air still carried the quiet music of the leaves. They passed the old cave where they had rested the first night. The stone bridge, the singing canyon. Even the mossy alien structure still stood, silent and glowing faintly under the sun. At the old beacon site, the grass had grown taller, but when Nia stepped into the field, something amazing happened. Tiny glowing bugs began to rise from the grass, floating all around them like stars. It was exactly like that final night, the night they had been rescued. They remember us, Nia whispered. Or they remember kindness, Rami replied. The science team set up camp nearby, building small shelters and placing sensors across the field. But Rami and Nia had one more thing to do. Together, they carried a small metal box, smooth, silver, simple. It wasn't a machine, it was something else. At the center of the field, they dug a small space, placed the box gently inside, and covered it again with the soft soil. What's in it? One young explorer asked. Nia answered softly, Just our story. A piece of our clothes, a photo, a message. What does the message say? Rami looked at him and replied, That carrying. Someone is not weakness, it's strength. Real strength comes from care. The young man nodded, understanding more than his years could say. As the sun set, the team lit soft lights across the site. Music played quietly from a speaker. It wasn't a party, it was something smaller, warmer. A celebration of the spirit that brought people home. Later that night, Nia and Rami sat near the fire, their backs against a stone. Do you think the planet helped us? Nia asked. Rami thought for a moment. Maybe. Or maybe we helped each other and the planet just watched. She smiled. I'm glad you didn't leave me. I never would have, he replied. She rested her head on his shoulder. They didn't say anything for a long time. They just looked up at the sky, where the stars slowly blinked and the moons of Varela rose again. Back at the space station, a quiet recording played on loop at the Academy for new recruits. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was Rami's voice, recorded during one of his rare talks. If you ever have the choice to walk away or carry someone, choose to carry. Not because it's easy, but because someone once carried me too in a way I didn't expect. With words, with trust, with presence. And that made all the difference. The recording ended there. New explorers listened with full hearts. And far away on a green planet glowing under twin moons, two friends walked through the jungle. Not lost, not afraid, not alone.